Welcome to Divine Intimacy Radio, a co-production of EWTN Radio and SpiritualDirection.com, where we provide you with a spiritual haven of rest and explore the riches of the wisdom of the saints and the path to union with God.
Hey friends, this is Dan and Stephanie Burke. Welcome to Divine Intimacy Radio, your radio haven of rest.
Your hermitage of the heart.
Your monastery of the mind, where we lift our hearts and minds to heaven to draw upon the wisdom of the saints to navigate the tumult of this life. And today we're talking about something that's very disturbing that just came up. It is out of our usual realm of conversation, and I mean, it's a spirit. It's dead center in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
But it's a new movie that swaps out Satan for Santa.
Santa for Satan.
Santa for Satan, and it's aimed at kids, and it's called Dear Santa. The reason it's so alarming is Stephanie brought it to my attention this morning, and I watched the trailer with her, and the trailer is very revealing. And I, you know, some people, I always hate it when I hear people slamming movies and they haven't seen the movie. But it is not possible, after watching the trailer, even if Jesus comes down from heaven at the end of the movie,
right, and redeems it all,
it is not possible that this is good for children of any age for any reason.
Right. No,
just
I agree.
Not possible.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
So basically, the storyline goes, and you correct me if I get it wrong. So you know, every year, parents have their kids write letters to Santa.
Mm-hmm.
And this situation, the kid misspells Santa and sends the letter to Satan.
Mm-hmm.
It gets to Satan. And then what Satan does is then proceeds to offer the kid three wishes, so to speak, that he will grant him. And then he will take the kid's soul.
And he says, and at the end, I'm going to take your soul.
Right. And I suspect, my suspicion about the end of the movie is the kid resists and doesn't end up possessed. But what I want to do is just talk about how deeply problematic this is. One is, I don't talk about this a lot because it's too personal, and it's too, even as I begin to talk about it, I know I'm not going to go very deep. The emotions are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I have personally been subjected to demonic influence in my home as a kid that just about tormented me out of my mind. I wrote about it briefly in Spiritual Warfare and Discernment of Spirits, just to give one instance. But I haven't, you know, I was recently on with Lila Rose, and she started to ask about it, and it was a great interview, and she didn't do anything wrong, but I'm like, I can't go any further than what I did there, and I can't do it now. But I can tell you that in our home, because of one particular person in our home who wanted to, try to manipulate reality, try to deal with their own suffering or whatever, they invited darkness, and it answered the invitation.
Yeah, they dabbled in the occult.
Right.
In different forms, and subjected you to that dabbling.
Right. And yeah, to this day, I haven't even I'm just beginning. I'll just be really honest with you. I'm just at the beginning of dealing with that trauma that happened, which was, you think about events in life where you're afraid, right? Where you're terrified at something, like a little kid and a dog attacking them. My brother was bitten in the face. Dave was bitten in the face by a German Shepherd. I mean, just horrifying things. Being in an accident. In my own home, my stepfather fired a gun in our home in an argument with my mother when I was like 8 or 9 or 10 years old. I don't remember the exact age. Terror. So I've experienced terror. And I want to just say to you that the terror of having a gun fired in your home on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 10. The terror of dealing with the demonic in its reality is there is no scale.
Especially for a child.
There is no scale, and
Right.
it seriously almost destroyed me.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie and I have been involved in many exorcisms
As part of the team.
as a part of the team, as a
Not as
serving a priest,
right.
in officially designated by the diocese, all appropriate.
Yeah.
Wherein a child was given over in a black mass and then lived with horrifying torment the entirety of our lives,
Of their life.
their life,
Yeah.
until they got free after 24 full rite exorcisms.
In old age.
Right.
Yeah, it took an entire lifetime for them to come, for that to surface, and then to
Right.
be dealt with through exorcism, right?
Right.
So that they could be set free.
So there's nothing funny
Mhm.
about Satan. It is not possible to redeem this movie. And I will say it again. We don't know what the ending is. I suspect the kid resisted the third wish, whatever,
Mhm.
and he didn't get his soul taken. And maybe even Satan got the bad end of the stick in the end of the movie. It's still not possible to expose your kids. We saw in the trailer there was a pentagram shown. You know, to expose your kids to just the idea that this is silly funny is like saying, oh, let's do a movie about how playful piranha fish are. Or let's do a movie about how kids can play around alligators and crocodiles, just and it's funny and it's humorous and it doesn't hurt anyone.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, even these examples I'm giving,
They
feel
don't. They don't
feel
even
kind of
touch
stupid.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't even touch it.
yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah,
That's my rant so far.
yeah. And you know, knowing how sometimes Hollywood writers write, and by the way, this is a Jack Black movie.
Mhm.
He plays the part of the Satan in this, and you know, I'm actually a bit horrified to think that maybe at the end, like the kid turns Satan into his best friend, and then he like turns out for good, which is a ridiculous um, fallacy as well, because then it still leads children down the wrong path of where they can make Satan their friend or whatever. The reality of it, going back to the example of our friend, going back to the example of your own life, is the demonic Satan demons are predators and pedophiles.
Mhm.
They are predators of children. They are pedophiles of children. That's what the outcome of children unprotected, exposed to the demonic, that's what happens to them.
And you know,
They are destroyed, or they are abused,
used and
used,
killed,
murdered. That's the reality of it. There's no way to take this and turn it into some sort of game or fun storyline.
Yeah. So what I want to do, I'm going to tell you something else that happened in an exorcism regarding children that'll send chills down your spine. But I want everyone watching this to share it with every single Catholic or Christian family that you know,
Mhm.
to warn them not to go see this movie. So we were in an exorcism, and the way the exorcism works is the exorcist priest seeks to get information about the demon, how it entered, the name of the demon, you know, as much detail as they can, because as they gain that information, they gain power. The exorcist gains power over the enemy. So when the exorcist was doing this with the demon in the exorcism, and remember, this was a child given up in a black mass. And then, I'm not going to tell you what else happened to this child, because it's just not.
It's horrific.
It's horrific. It's just beyond imagination. Yeah. But the demon said, so the exorcist was making progress regarding when the demon entered the child, and the exorcist was asking how and all of this, and the demon laughed at the exorcist and said, children are easy.
Mm-hmm.
Children are easy.
Yeah.
Children are going to get, in my opinion, from this movie, the idea, oh, I can
Talk to Satan.
I can talk to Satan and he'll give me stuff
Mm-hmm.
in exchange for my soul. Big deal. What does that mean? They don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that kids are, because of this movie, are going to be chasing those ideas down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll just tell you a story about our producer, that Jordan, our oldest son, who's very devout Catholic. He was reading. Were you reading Harry Potter or watching Harry Potter?
Reading it.
He was reading Harry Potter. Jordan, when he was a little kid, was pretty obedient, and when he was young. But there was this one situation where he's reading Harry Potter, and the book put in his head that it was the logic that it was okay to do evil, that good might come.
Mm-hmm.
What was so shocking to me in that conversation, were you in that conversation?
With Jordan?
Yeah.
No, this is before
Okay.
I knew y'all.
Yeah.
He was little.
So what was so shocking, and I don't know if you remember it, Jordan, is I could not unravel it. I tried to talk with him logically. I tried to reason with him. And ultimately what I did was I got very angry with him. And not necessarily, I went sort of Archie Bunker on him, I guess. But do you remember that, Jordan? But why I'm using that as an example is this is a kid who's being taught about Jesus, who's going to church, who's being catechized in the faith,
mm-hmm.
who's reading a fantasy novel that has a very bad idea that stuck in Jordan's head.
Mm-hmm.
And he wouldn't let go of it, even though at that stage in his life, he was very docile to me. My point is that that's just a book.
Mm-hmm.
This is a movie with all kinds of jokes and humor
and images,
mm-hmm.
and then, most of our children are already addicted to all kinds of social media.
Mm-hmm.
They're already exposed to other things that are just going to tie into this movie. So I'm grateful that we're talking about this. After the break, we're going to break down a little bit more about this movie, Dear Santa, and the demonic elements of it that I think are incredibly problematic. We want to warn as many people as possible because it's coming out this Thanksgiving break. So
yeah, and so please send this video of this show out to every Catholic every Christian
every family,
post it on every Facebook page, whatever social media you use, and let people know about what's going on.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
The beautiful fact that no suffering is wasted, that all suffering has a purpose, and to wrestle with the idea, which is that everything that happens in our lives is either willed or permitted by God. Okay, God, why would you permit these things? I know that you're a good father and you're a loving father, so there's something there. So I have to bridge this gap between your permission of my suffering to your love for me as a father. And Uniformity with God's Will, the book by St. Alphonsus Liguori, bridges that gap. And he explains, as only he can, because he's such a hard hitter, the reality that these are all moments of growth, of virtue, of, hey, your legs are weak. You're like a newborn deer. You can't stand on your own. We need to get you to stand on your own. Those sorts of things. Even desolation. The day-to-day kind of the ebbs and flows of the spiritual life. Those things are all permitted for a greater good, whatever that might be.
Check out the brand new updated version of Uniformity with God's Will titled Finding Peace in the Storm with commentary by Dan Burke.
This is Dan and Stephanie Burke. Welcome back to Divine Intimacy Radio, your radio haven of rest. And I am having a difficult time containing my emotions in this show. A difficult time because what I don't want to do is go over the top and have people go, he's an alarmist. But what we're talking about today is a movie that's come out called Dear Santa that I promise you will confuse the hell out of your kids, or confuse the hell into your kids. And I just think that We don't do a lot of this. Of course, this show is all about the interior life, and it does fit because we do talk about satanic things and that sort of
spiritual warfare and discernment of spirits.
Yeah. Before the break,
Yeah.
I talked about my own experience with the demonic as a child and how it literally nearly destroyed my heart and mind. And had the Lord not intervened, I would have ended up in a casket because of it. And it happened because of innocent, in a way, in quotes, occultic involvement in my home as a child.
Ignorant. I wouldn't say it was innocent. I would have said ignorant.
Ignorant.
Yeah.
You know, the intent was good. And it's just, there is nothing redeeming about a movie like this.
I was trying to think, my own experience with children. I used to be a Catholic school principal for over 10 years and a regular school principal before that in the public system for another 15 years and a teacher and all that. One of my experiences when I was at a very poor school in the middle of gang territory in Colorado Springs, this was a public school system. I was beginning my journey. I was beginning to pray and develop a prayer life and really going through this purgation and reversion into what it meant to be a true Catholic. And one of the things that was very heartbreaking and fascinating to me was to watch children in those hallways and in our classrooms. Now, to give you some context, we had over 300 office referrals in 1 year.
What does that mean? There's over 300 fights.
Some sort of altercation that it was enough. And it wasn't just fighting, but it would have been sexual. It would have been all kinds of things. Behavior that was egregious, that was so disruptive that it needed to be referred to the office rather than just to our counselor, right? And then we had 150 cases in 1 year of domestic abuse. And that was what we could see on the children.
Right.
Here I am walking through these hallways. I'm praying to God every day. I'm getting to the Eucharist as much as possible. And as it were at that time, I was becoming awake, really awake to the spiritual realities of what was happening. And what was so incredibly shocking to me is I could watch a line of 3 and 4 year olds, 5-year-olds in line, not to mention the older kids, right? But especially the little ones. One child would come in with light, goodness, gentleness, warmth, love. You knew that they came out of a healthy household. Even if it was a poor household, it was a healthy, emotionally, behaviorally, all of that. Stable home. Then you would have another child come in, and you could see the darkness literally as they came across the threshold of the school. And they would be in the line, and you would hear language that you should never hear out of a 4 and a 5-year-old, vile comments. If another child accidentally bumped into them, they didn't respond with, hey, they responded with a punch to the face. I have seen little children do sexual acts on themselves and others. Like, it's just shocking. It's absolutely shocking. I literally left that school crying one day, and you told me that after crying for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours straight, that it was uncontrollable because I'd seen abuse and all of this stuff. And it just wrecked me that you asked me to leave my position because I was married to you. We had children. I had other things, and it was literally sucking the life out of me. And I did move out of that position after that year. Why do I bring that up? Children, when they are born, all things being equal, are innocent. They're innocent.
Now, they have original sin, but what do you mean by that?
They're not, their thoughts, their behaviors, their appetites, their normative how to act and behave has not been formed or damaged by humans. The babies cry when they're hungry. They cry when they're wet. They need to be held, all those normative things. When you see behaviors that are way beyond that, out of control, the destructive behaviors towards others, then there's something that has, happened in the life of that child to cause that.
Right.
And that's what I think, the demons meant in that.
Yeah, about children are
About
easy.
children are easy because they're open doors. And especially if there's no spiritual coverage of the
Their
father,
parents, yeah.
if there's no sacramental life, if there's no rosary, if there's no graces covering that child, of course that child is an open book because they're so receptive and absolutely absorbing everything around them. So then you look at this movie, this Dear Santa movie, which it has little horns on the D of deer or the S of Santa. I don't know which one. So it just barely
The S,
kind of, it just barely kind of hints. It does a little kind of.
It has a little letter that does spell Dear Satan. It says it on the letter.
Okay. So
Yeah.
a little, it changes a little.
Yeah.
But you have to really get into
The
the trailer to understand the problem with all this. This movie trivializes satanic worship, trivializes the demonic. It turns it into satire. It normalizes it. It normalizes it. I guarantee you, I bet in this movie, you're going to find things like Ouija boards, seances,
Yeah.
who knows what all else is there. I don't know that.
Yeah.
But based on what is already there.
Just on the trailer, it's horrific.
Yeah. Just on that. And so what do children do that come out of homes that have no graces, no coverage, no protection?
Well, and that doesn't mean children with homes with protection should see this either.
No.
But you're just talking about the most vulnerable.
The most vulnerable are those who have no protection at all, where their parents throw them, $20 and drop them off at the movies and they don't care what they go see. And they're sitting there and watching that. They're going to absorb that because of their curiosity. They're going to act it out. I used to discuss with, other teachers in that context of that school. We shouldn't be shocked when children are displaying these behaviors because they don't know what to do with it. They absorb it, they take it in, and they imitate. That's how they learn to be human, or in some cases, not human. They absorb behaviors and then they reenact them. And in this case, if they absorb those behaviors and reenact them, they're running the risk of being oppressed, possessed, having huge demonic interference and destruction come into their lives, and later into their family lives, because the enemy doesn't like to let go. Once he gets a hold of you, he doesn't want to let go.
I couldn't agree more. I guess the other thing that's bugging me about all this, there's two things I want to say. One is, what was the number one post on our website?
How do I make a pact with the devil?
How to make it right, because we talked about that, and actually kids, adults are searching for how to do that,
right?
Like
and what
and just listen to that and understand that's happening now. It hits our website, God be praised, because we tell them you would never want to do that, how bad that is. How to make a pact with the devil. The other thing is, I just finished writing a book about hell, and it's called The Truth, the Truth About Hell. And it was a very difficult book to write, to go back to Jesus' words and, deal with the eternal nature of hell and the torment and what some of the saints have said goes on in hell and all of that. And I guess that's also why it's so vivid. So my childhood experience, our work in exorcism, and then this recent book, and I'm just, deeply troubled. I mean, I could weep about it. Because, as you have said so well, children are so vulnerable, and they're just. I'm actually a big free speech guy.
Yeah, me too.
I really have no interest in like censorship, but as a consumer, we can tell other consumers you shouldn't consume this. It's really bad for you.
Right.
And so, please do us a favor. Do yourself a favor. Do the church a favor. Protestants,
families,
Catholics,
doesn't matter,
Orthodox, whoever they are, send this video of this show, and you can find it. If the show's over and you're watching it via live stream, you can find it at spiritualdirection.com
on our YouTube page.
I'm sorry, spiritualdirection.com YouTube page, and then it'll go out via our email. But please share it with everybody in the planet. Like it. Make a comment on it so that YouTube algorithm picks it up and it goes viral.
Let's send a message to Hollywood and the like that we don't want to, our children need to be protected, in the womb, out of the womb, everywhere. Doesn't matter what age they are. Our children are not to be just
They're to be nurtured and protected.
Yes.
And
they're not to be victimized this way. And we need to protect our children, and we need to help get the word out so that parents can understand what's out there. Get the word out. This is not a children's movie. It's not an adult movie. It's not humorous.
And thankfully, the ratings are terrible, by the way, already.
Great.
And diving, which is really good. So hopefully the thing tanks in the first week and just doesn't even make it.
Yeah.
Past
we
the
can
next
hope
week.
so. Yeah.
But send this out, please, to everyone you know. Pray for those kids who are unprotected who are going to watch this kind of junk.
Right.
It is comedy. It does make light of these things, but that is the very thing that drops the guard of kids, and it'll get ideas and concepts into their head, just like I talked about with Jordan when he was young.
It normalizes it.
It normalizes it. You would never have your kids watch a movie about how they can drink chemicals from under the kitchen sink and come to some glorious altered state.
Right. Or how to roll a joint.
Right.
Or whatever. You wouldn't expose your children to this, to any of these things. So certainly we shouldn't be exposing our children to this.
All right. So we're coming to the end of our show. Of course, the Avila Institute, the Avila Foundation, the entirety of who we are and what we do is oriented to lifting up the authentic magisterial teachings of the church, to revealing the truth and helping people understand how to walk that way. If you want to learn more about courses at the Avila Institute, go to avila-institute.org, or about our largest millions of views on our webpage, spiritualdirection.com, or our YouTube page. Check it all out. You'll find all you need to grow in holiness.
With that, until next time, may the God of peace make you perfect in holiness. May he preserve you whole and entire, spirit, soul, and body, irreproachable at the coming of our Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Learn more about the interior life. Visit spiritualdirection.com. Divine Intimacy Radio is a co-production of EWTN Radio and spiritualdirection.com and heard worldwide on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.